Okay. I'm just going to be discussing the multiplier in this video. And this is not just for the students who were away when we did it in class. There are a couple of concepts that we did not cover in the class in for this chapter, and those concepts are not in the textbook either. So you have to make sure that regardless of the fact that if you've attended the class or not, you still have to listen to this, please. Um, okay, so we're just going to talk about the multiplier. We all know what aggregate demand and aggregate supply is. Aggregate demand is a accumulative, the total demand of an economy, and aggregate supply is the total supply. It could be of an economy, of a business, or whatever it is. Okay. We also did the formulas for aggregate demand, and that's basically consumption plus investment plus government expenditure plus exports minus imports or net exports. And for aggregate supply, it's it's consumer spending plus savings plus taxation by the government. There are two things, or there's actually, sorry, one thing that's similar in both of this, and that is consumption over here. It's consumption, or consumer spending, my bad. Consumer spending is the same for aggregate supply and aggregate demand. That's it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to try and put this together. So we've got the formula for aggregate demand over here. We've got the formula for aggregate supply over here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to try to sort this out. And again, this is something that we've already done in year 11, but I'm just very, very briefly brushing over it. So that's again consumer spending plus investment plus government expenditure plus net exports equals to consumer spending plus savings plus taxation. Obviously, we're going to cut out both the C's because that's the same according to the mathematic formula. So that we are left with investment plus government expenditure plus government spending plus exports minus imports equals to savings plus taxes. What we're going to do is we're going to put investments, government spending, and exports together, and imports, which is minus M, goes to the other side, making it plus M. And that way we come up with the injections plus leakages formula. Again, we've done this in year 11. So we are aware of the fact that a leakage is something that is a money, or that is it's really just something that's going out of the economy that is not flowing within the economy. So savings is definitely a leakage, mainly because that money that you're saving up, you could have been spending that somewhere else, right? Taxation is also a leakage because that tax that you're giving to the government could have been spent somewhere else, could have been spent on buying products. And lastly, imports is also leakage because when goods from overseas come in, and when you buy those goods, you're actually paying them, so that's money going outside of the economy. Injections is basically money flowing within the economy, and that's investment. So when you have people investing in your economy, that basically means that you have more money coming in, and that means that businesses can actually then use that money to do whatever it is that they want to. Then we're left with government spending. Government spending that like they're doing right now. How much was it that the government has spent? You guys should be knowing this. They've so far I think they've spent around $189 billion. There were some additions made last week with $750 given to individuals, but anyway. So all of that government spending is money given to the people, given to the businesses, that can be spent in the economy, that can be spent on businesses. And again, exports is also an injection, and the main reason for that is just because when you're exporting products, you're actually taking your products to other countries, but then they're paying you, and that's money that comes in, right? So we know that leakages of savings, taxation, and imports will equal to the injections of investment, government spending, and exports. We also know that if injections are greater than leakages, that basically means that if you have more money flowing in the economy than going out of the economy, then economic growth will increase, right? And the main reason for that is that you have more money in the economy, so you have more reasons to spend it. You have something, right? And again, you can apply that in your own life as well. If you don't have money, how are you going to go out and buy food? If you have $100 out of that, you will be very much inclined to go and buy food and then just buy some other groceries as well, whatever it is that you want to do with it. That's because you have it, right? And again, if leakages are greater than injections, that means that there's less money in the economy, and there's more money outside of the economy, or more money that's not being spent on the economy. So that's going to obviously decrease economic growth, right? Um, there's some slides here that I got from the economic skills booklet that I already gave you guys. So please make sure that you do look at that. So if leakages are greater than injections, the economy contracts. When we say economy contracts, that basically means that economic growth declines. If leakages are less than injections, or if injections are greater than leakages, then the economy is obviously going to expand, right? If leakages equal to injections, then economy is going to be in equilibrium. Again, we've done this. It was just a very, very brief brush up of what we've done so far. We are aware of this. And it's okay if you're not, feel free to actually go back and, you know, watch this again and again, or really just message me. I'm happy to have a Zoom class in regards to this. It's not a difficult concept, it's just a tricky concept. But it should be okay, it's not too bad. Anyway, we're just going to talk about GDP very briefly again. We did this in chapter 1 and chapter 3. But anyway, so GDP we know is the total value of the final goods and services produced within an economy, right? Remember, GDP is a measure of the size of an economy. So if you want to know how big the economy is or how valuable the goods in the economy are, you just look at the GDP. An increase in GDP indicates economic growth. We're aware of that as well. Um, And again, so aggregate demand is the total demand for goods and services in an economy. AD equals to consumption plus investment plus government spending plus exports minus imports. Aggregate demand is the value of everything that is purchased. Okay, please remember that. So everything that is purchased within an economy, so everything that people purchase from Australia or in Australia is going to be the aggregate demand. Okay. However, gross domestic product is the value of everything that is produced. So that is produced within an economy is GDP. Technically, it's kind of the same. The only reason, and the main reason being that if GDP is everything that is produced, all of that is produced has to be then purchased. Because if it wasn't going to be purchased, why would you produce it? If I have a business and if I know that there's no demand for my product, why am I going to waste my money in producing that product? Right, so the whole idea is that they kind of pretty much the same thing. We're gonna use them interchangeably, right? Therefore, aggregate demand equals to the GDP, because everything that is produced has to be purchased. If it was not going to be purchased, you would not have produced it, right? So in this concept, we're going to consider aggregate demand to be the same as GDP. Just keep that in mind. We're just going to move on and talk about this. We also did nominal and real GDP in chapter 1, chapter 3. So again, what would happen? And we also know the fact that prices increase every year, and the reason for that is inflation. So the value of a product kind of increases every year. So if this pen is for $10 today, tomorrow it's going to be for, or next year or the year after, it's going to be for $12, right? If you go and ask your parents how much was a pen for in their time, it'd probably be for $1. And the main reason for that is because the prices keep on increasing. So because of inflation. We haven't done this yet, but when we come to the chapter of inflation, you guys will understand this concept well as to why the prices increase. Why do they have to increase, right? But anyway, so we know the GDP for year 1, year 2. But anyway, so what if inflation was 5%? So nominal GDP is GDP at current marketplaces. Please keep that in mind. The main reason I'm doing this slide is because I want you guys to be able to differentiate between nominal and real GDP. So nominal GDP is a GDP at the current market price. So this pen is for $10 in the market. So that is the normal. And so for all the products produced, the value for that will be the nominal GDP. The real GDP is adjusted for inflation. So they kind of take out inflation from there, because inflation is the increase in price. So they take out the increase in price and then tell you the real GDP, the real value of your product, without the price increase, or you know, whatever it is. To have real GDP, nominal GDP growth must be greater than real GDP. And the reason for that is because the nominal GDP is the current market price, which is normally always high, and the real GDP is going to be lower, or the value of that particular product, or even the whole GDP, is going to be lower, just because inflation is taken out of it. That's all. All I want you guys to know is the difference between normal and real GDP, really. So we're done with that as well. Again, this formula is not in your textbook, so please, please, please memorize it. We know what CPI is. That's the consumer price index. I'm not going to revisit it. Feel free to go back to chapter 1 or chapter 3, and understand what that is. We'll also be covering this in one of the chapters which are coming up next as well. Anyway, so real GDP equals to nominal GDP over CPI into 100. Just memorize this, please. And I want you guys to pause the video now and really just calculate the real GDP for 2013, 14, and 15, please. Again, all you need to do is just plug in the values in the formula and then you'll just get the answer. Forgot to say this. If you're sitting for this and if you're watching this lecture, as you should be, all of you, I need you all to have a calculator with you. You cannot watch this without a calculator, because we're going to be doing some solutions as well, so please make sure that you all have a calculator. Now, let's assume there was a shock in the economy. Now, a shock in the economy doesn't necessarily have to be a negative shock. It could also be a positive shock. For instance, changes in interest rates. The government decides to decrease interest rates. That's going to make people very happy because that means that they can borrow more money and they can spend more, right? So that's going to be a shock in the economy in terms of how people feel about it. And then over time they can, then borrow more and then spend more, and that's going to increase economic growth and all of that. So a shock in economy can occur because of changes in interest rates, changes in expectations. That's exactly what's happening right now. One of the reasons why we don't have investments now, or we have a decrease in foreign investments, is not just the fact that the government has made things harder, but it's also the fact that people are very sure about the outcomes of certain businesses in the economy. We know that businesses are crashing because of COVID and people are suffering and all of that. In that case, why should I spend all my savings into a business that's already doing bad? How is that going to benefit me? Because if they're very unstable now, how do I know that they're going to be able to get themselves to stable afterwards? So again, changes in expectations for consumer expectations, business expectations, government expectation, whatever it is. Changes in government policy as well. Government policy in regards to just anything that's going on in the economy that's going to, be a bit of a shock for some businesses, some consumers, and then investment changes as well. If you have less investments like we do right now, all of a sudden businesses are going to suffer. That's going to be a shock for the economy, right? Now let's just consider this example. A decrease in interest rates. So let's assume that there's a decrease in interest rates, as there is right now already, right? What is the interest rate right now? You guys should know the answer. Right now it is 0.25%. We started off with 0.75% last year, which was already quite low. And then we moved on to 0.5% in February because of COVID. And because things were still very bad, we moved to 0.25%. Anyway, a decrease in interest rate will lead to an increase in business investment and will create an increase in expenditure. This is a question that I already asked in class, but I need you guys to tell me, how will a decrease in interest rate lead to an increase in business investment? We already studied that businesses will want to invest more if there is high interest rate, right? And the reason for that is because they will get more returns, right? So, for instance, if I'm signing a contract that says that the interest rate at that time is around 5%, that's great, right? So that means that all the returns that I get are going to be on that 5% interest. But if the interest rates are low, how is that going to increase in business investment, right? And again, when we discuss in class, we realize that a business would increase in investment when the business itself invests in itself. For instance, if I have a business, I'm not going to wait for others to come and invest in me. I'm going to go and borrow money from the bank and invest in my own business to make sure that I can stabilize my business, right? Not just that. Some foreign investors also look for low interest because then they can borrow money from the bank and then invest in other businesses. So when the interest rate is low, they can borrow more money from the bank and then invest in other businesses. So when it comes to interest rates, they're very different. There are many different reasons why businesses would want to go for a high interest rate or low interest rate, right? Or why investors would want to go for high interest rates or low interest rates. But in this context, let's just assume that a lower interest rate is good for a business, because that in turn, the person who owns the business itself can easily borrow money from the bank and then invest in their own business, right? This will create an increase in business invest an increase in business investment, and this will also create an increase in expenditure. Expenditure is basically just spending. It's going to increase in spending in the sense that if the business borrows more money from the bank very easily, they can then in turn use that money for their business, and that use is going to be investing more, let's say, factors of production or whatever it is, let's say buying more capital. So that's in turn going to increase expenditure because they're buying more, they're spending their money. Okay. Now they can do that, but they can also increase their expenditure for anything else. They can, let's say, if the interest rates are really low, I'm going to go buy more capital. I buy more capital. I'm really happy because now my business is doing well. I'm able to produce enough. I'm selling more. Consumers are really happy. And since my business is doing well, I want my staff to be happy as well. So I might as well just raise their salary. Just give them a raise or give them a bonus or whatever it is. That's going to make them very happy. And if my staff is happy, my business is going to do well. So let's just do that. So let's assume that the business then decided to increase consumer income. By consumer income, I basically mean staff income. So the people who were working for the business, they see an increase in their income, which is great. When there's an increase in their income, that in turn leads to an increase in consumption. People then are going to consume more, because let's say the school decides to increase my income. If the school decides to increase my income, I'm going to be very happy and I'm going to go and want to buy some things just to celebrate, or whatever it is. If there's an increase in consumption, that's going to further increase the demand and income as well. Look, if there's an increase in consumption, that basically means that people are demanding more, right? If I get more money, if I get more pay, more salary, I then want to go and buy more things. If I want to go and buy more things, businesses need to be able to provide me those things, right? Because there's more demand. And if there's more demand, then businesses will actually produce more. When they produce more, they're doing really well. And that in turn will lead them to increase their staff salary. And when their staff salary is increased, then they will spend more. And, this goes on and on and on and on and on. That's how it basically works, right? So one effect, one decision of an economy, of the government, of whatever it is, can actually lead to a lot of other benefits or a lot of other drawbacks for other people, right? So the initial increase in investment will have a multiplied impact on national income. That's what I'm trying to say over here. And that is called the multiplier. Because you can increase, or the government can decide to inject, let's say, $10,000 in the economy. For us, it's just $10,000, but in reality, that can be really, really, really effective, in the sense that can actually lead to an increase in $100,000 in reality. And we'll understand how that actually works. Now, the problem is that investments will not continue to grow forever. They cannot continue to grow forever, because if the business decides to increase staff salary, let's say by 1,000, do you think the staff's going to go and spend all of that 1,000 on shopping? If the school decides to increase my salary by 1,000, do you think I'm going to go and spend that exact 1,000 on everything? No, probably not. You would probably want to then save some of it, right? So the business can increase, let's say if I get a bonus of 1,000, and I'll probably go and spend 400 of that, but I'll want to save 600 of that, right? And that's the main problem over here. Investments will not continue to grow forever. Every time an investment goes around, the impact of expenditure will actually decrease, because some of income is not consumed, it is saved, right? So the actual impact of an injection in the economy will be huge, but it won't be huge enough, just because all of that injection will not be consumed, or will not be spent on expenditure, will be spent on savings. It is saved. Saving is a leakage which reduces the effect of investment. Okay? Now, again, I want you guys to stop now. Write all of this down, please. Once you're done with that, let's move on. Again, I need you guys to know this definition very well. The number of times the final increase in national income exceeds, that's the key over here, exceeds the initial increase in expenditure is called the multiplier. So what this is saying is that the final increase of national income should be more than the initial increase in expenditure or investment. So let's say if the government is injecting $10,000 in the economy, or national income, in this we can also call this national income, is injecting $10,000, that in turn should give us around $50,000. That would be the multiplier. Okay, so that basically means that the money is multiplied and multiplied and multiplied and multiplied. We'll understand how that happens, but that's all you guys need to keep in mind. So the initial injection of whatever dollars in the economy should be less than the actual end result that you get, the actual increase in the end result. Okay, so the number of times the final increase in national income exceeds the initial increase in expenditure is called the multiplier. Remember this very well, please. The multiplier effect is the changes in aggregate demand result in the changes of A in GDP. Just write that down as a definition, and we'll actually talk about the multiplier effect as well. Okay, I'm just gonna I need you guys to stop and write this down. We're gonna move on. The multiplier definition, write this down as well. The multiplier is a greater than proportional increase in income resulting from an increase in AD. That's fine. MPC and MPS, I don't know if you guys remember, we did this in year 11. APC is the average propensity to consume. APS is the average propensity to save. That's basically that you have income, which is Y, right? And your income is always going to be Y equals to C plus S, and the reason for that is that your income can either be consumed or it can either be saved, right? Remember that? So when it comes to MPC on the other hand is basically a change in consumption divided by change in income, and the MPS is a change in savings divided by change in income, right? And the reason for that is because MPC basically means that additional income that I get. Let's say I get $1,000 normally, and now I get $1,010. That $10 extra that I get, how much of that am I going to be consuming, and how much of that am I going to be saving, is MPC and MPS. So that additional $1 that you get, or the additional $10, $15, $2,000 that you get, what are you going to be doing with that? Are you going to be consuming that, or are you going to be saving that? That is the MPC or the MPS. Okay, let's look at the definition. The MPC, that is the proportion of each extra dollar of income that is spent on consumer products, and the MPS is that is the proportion of each extra dollar of income that is saved. Please pause the video, write this down right now. Now moving on, I'm not going to go through this because we already did. We already went through this. So we all know that the GDP and the aggregate demand is pretty much almost the same thing. We discussed that. Aggregate demand is everything that's purchased. GDP is everything that is produced. You're not going to produce everything if you don't purchase it, right? So the formula for that we already did is C plus I, consumer spending plus investment plus government expenditure plus X minus M. Okay? If we just put that into an equation, let's say consumption is 4 billion, investment is 2 billion, government expenditure is 3 billion, and then X minus M is 7 minus 6. The GDP that you get is 10 billion. Let's say that the government increases government spending to $5 billion, right? Now, the key over here is what you see. It says the government increases the government expenditure to 5 billion, not by 5 billion. If it said by 5 billion, then we would actually add 5 plus 3, right? It says to 5 billion. That basically means that the change is only 5. So you're just going to write 5 over here. So 4 plus 2, not 3, 5 over here, because government increases to 5 billion, plus 7 minus 6. So that is a 2 billion increase in GDP, because before it was 10, now it's 12. The increase in GDP is 2 billion, right? We know that too. Now, so remember the formula y equals to c plus s, just keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that MPC plus MPS always equals to 1. So MPC can be whatever, MPS can be whatever, but it has to equal to 1. In this context, MPC is 0.60, MPS is 0.40. That's it. Okay, keep that in mind. Now, let's imagine that there's an increase in investment of $10,000. So that's an injection in the economy, right? So the government or foreign investors, whoever, whatever, has injected $10,000 in the economy, right? Or we can also call this an increase in aggregate demand, because we know that injections is a part of aggregate demand over here, right? Injection is a part of aggregate demand or GDP. So that's an increase in aggregate demand of $10,000. If the economy was previously in equilibrium, and we know equilibrium is I equals to L or AS equals to AD, so that would basically means that AD has increased, because investments is a part of AD. It's an injection. Or that would mean that L has increased, because investments is a part of L. Okay? So just keep that in mind. MPC is 0.60, MPS is 0.40, and there's an increase in investment of, what do you call it? $10,000. In that case, let's assume, since we know MPC is 0.60, what is 10,000 into 0.60? Calculate that, please. 10,000 into 0.60 is 6,000. So we know that the consumption now is 6,000. Let me just get a better color. Okay. We know that the consumption is 6,000, and we also know the savings. If consumption is 6,000, the savings has to be 4,000, right? Because that adds up to 10. Now, let's say the business decide to increase employee wages. They're very happy, they're doing really well, there's a lot of demand for them because there's an increase in consumption. They decide to increase employee wages. Okay, now the employers have an increase of 6,000 in their wages, right? This business spends 6,000 on their employee wages. So again, 4,000 they're saving for themselves, 6,000 that they're spending on consumption. They could have bought capital, they could have bought whatever it is that they, or done whatever it is that they want to do. This time they decide to invest in employees. In that case, so employees have an increase in their salary of 6,000. So 6,000 then becomes their new income, or that becomes their increased income. Out of the 6,000, 0.60 again is the MPC and 0.40 is the MPS. Out of the 6,000, they're going to consume 3,600, because 0.60 into 6,000 equals to 3,600, plus 2,400, because that is the savings. So savings is 24, consumption is 36. Hopefully we're following. And again, that in turn, because consumption is 3,600, that goes to different businesses, and the business again decide to increase employee salary, or really just do whatever it is. Out of that consumption, again, you're going to have 0.60, 3,600 is 2,160, plus 1,440, which is the MPS, or which is the savings. And that in turn, again, consumption is 2,160, because that's spent on different businesses. They then again decide to increase employee salary, really just do whatever it is that they want to with it. And that in turn again goes into, you divide it into C plus S, consumption and savings. Now this can go on and on and on and on and on, and this really is the multiplier, because just an increase in investment of 10,000 can lead to an increase of a lot of consumption, and lead to an increase in a lot of happiness for a lot of employees. That's a lot of their salary that's increased. Now, this is a very, very complicated way of doing it, and we're not going to ask you to do this in the exam. The easy way of doing this is really just applying this formula. Okay? So to know the side of the multiplier, or to know how much of that initial increase of investment has multiplied, all you need to do is just put this formula. K stands for the multiplier. All you need to do is K equals to 1 divided by MPS, or k equals to 1 divided by 1 minus MPC. 1 divided by 1 minus MPC. You can do this, or you can just do 1 over MPS. We know over here that MPS is 0.40. That's why k equals to 1 over 0.4, and we know now that the multiplier is 2.5. That's it. Now, we know that the multiplier is 2.5. What I want to know is how much is the actual increase of the 10,000 investment. So if the government invested 10,000, or if the foreign investors invested $10,000, which is great, I want to know what is the end result of it. What is the end outcome of it, or what is the end increase of it? In order for me to know that, all I need to do is 2.5 multiplied by 10,000. That's it. And then I get the answer. So the total increase in income generated by an increase in 10,000 dollars in aggregate demand equals to, again, this is a formula. Please write this down. Y, which is income, equals to K into change in aggregate demand. Right? K, we know, stands for the multiplier, and we know that the multiplier is 2.5 over here. Change in aggregate demand, or an increase in aggregate demand, or decrease in aggregate demand, is 10,000. So 2.5 into 10,000 and 25,000. So the actual increase due to that that investment of 10,000 is 25,000. The increase in national income is 2.5 times higher than an increase in aggregate demand, or the increase in the initial aggregate demand. Please keep that in mind. The NPS causes income to decrease because it is not spent. Please keep this in mind. It's not said, definitely not clear in your textbook. Keep this in mind. Keep in mind that if the NPS is high, then the multiplier will be low. And the reason for that is mainly because MPS is a leakage. It is not an injection. If it was an injection, then the multiplier would be high. It's a leakage. You're not spending it in the economy. You're saving it. So it's away from the economy. In that case, it's not good because you want more money flowing in the economy. That is why the multiplier will be low. Okay, so imagine, or for a good example of that would be, we did k equals to 1 over MPS, or k equals to 1 over 0.4 is 2.5. Try doing k equals to 1 over 0.8. K equals to 1 over 0.8 is 1.25. That's a lot lower than this, and the reason for that is because MPS is higher. It was 0.4 here, we did 0.8. When the MPS is high, the multiplier is low. When the MPS is low, the multiplier is high. Now, also keep in mind that the MPC will add onto the total income. If the MPS is high, then, if the MPS is high, that basically means that the multiplier is going to be high. If the MPC is low, that basically means that the multiplier is going to be low. Write this down as I'm saying it, please. Super important, not mentioned clearly in your book. I'm not going to bother going through this again because we've done this in class already. Not going to bother going through this. And again, we've already discussed this above as well. Now let's practice this. I need you guys to pause the video now and just tell me the answers for all of this. Okay. Now the answers for this is, now what they're asking you is, the table shows data for national income and consumption in billions for a hypothetical economy. Calculate the savings in year 1. So in year 1, how much have they saved? In order to know how much you've saved, we already know that y equals to c plus s. So if c is 40, then what is 75 minus 75? Or what is 40 minus 75? That's 35, and that's the answer. Now B, the country's MPC. And we also know the formula for MPC over here. We know that the formula for MPC is change in consumption over change in income. So a change in consumption over change in income. What is a change in consumption? That's basically 12. Because again, 52 minus 40 is 12. Divided by 20, and that should give you 0.6. And that is the MPC. And if we know that MPC is 0.6, we automatically know that the MPS is 0.4 because the MPC plus MPS equals to 1. Okay, the multiplier, all you need to do is just put on the formula, which is K equals to 1 over MPS, which is 0.4, and the answer is 2.5, right? So we know all this. If you all got it right, excellent, very good. Then the income in year 3, if there is an increase in investment of 5 billion. So if there's an increase in investment of 5 billion, all you've got to do is multiply it with the multiplier, and we know that the multiplier is 2.5, so 2.5 into 5 gives you 12.5, and that's the actual answer. The answers are also written over here, so please feel free to see them. Let's move on. I'm not going to go through this. These are just certain concepts that we did in class already. These are the workbook questions. I already gave you guys time to revise it or to do it by yourself, so I'm just going to very, very briefly go over them right now. And then we're done with this lesson. Now, over here it says that the table below refers to data for a hypothetical economy that has income, consumption, savings, and investment. Which of the following represents the multiplier, which is K, and the MPC for the economy? So what they're asking you is which one is accurate over here. Now, in order to find the MPC, we know that what we really just have to do is change in consumption over change in income. And a change in consumption in this case is 60, because what is 600 minus 540? That's 60. Or what's 480 minus 540? That's 60. So that's 60 divided by change in income. We know already it's 100. So again, 600 to 700 is 100, 700 to 800 is 100, so that's just 100, and that just gives you 0.6. So it's either D or it's either B, basically. Right? Now let's just look at the multiplier. For the multiplier, all you need to do is just plug in the formula, which is K equals to, since we already know the MPC, which is 0.6, equals to 1 minus 0.6, it should give you 2.5. Henceforth, we know that the answer is D. Okay? Now let's look at question number 3. Question number 3 says, government spending in an economy rises by 60 billion, so that's an investment, or that's an injection of 60 billion. If the economy has a MPC of 0.4, what would be the change in GDP? All you need to do is just put in the multiplier formula, which is K equals to 1 over 1 minus 0.4, because that's the formula, and that should give you 1.67, and if we know 1.67 is the multiplier, we just multiply it with the increase in GDP, which is 60, so 1.67 into 60 should give you 100. Hence why there is an increase in 100, and the answer is D. Okay, we're done with that. Question number 5. The following, the information in the table refers to a hypothetical economy. The APS, MPS, APC, MPC, and the GDP. What would be the total gross domestic product in this economy if consumption rises by 20 billion? So there's an increase in consumption by 20 billion, and they're asking you what would be the total value or the change in the GDP. All you've got to do in this case is to put in the formula for the multiplier first, which is K equals to 1 over MPS. We know over here 1 over MPS, or it could be 1 over 1 minus 0.9, which is MPC, but I'm just going to do it the easier way. 1 over 0.1 gives you 10, right? So that is the multiplier, and again, the consumption rises. We also know that consumption is that an injection or a leakage? Let's go up and look. It's actually an injection because you're spending on the economy, you're not saving it. But anyway, let's just Okay, it doesn't clearly say over here just because it's not a part of the leakage and injections formula, but if you look over here, consumer spending is actually, well, in this case, it's actually a part of aggregate supply. It's also part of aggregate demand. But we're just going to assume that it's a part of aggregate demand and that it's an injection just because common sense says that is money that is being spent on the economy. Okay? It's not money that is being saved. So, which one were we on? We were on this one. Right, sorry. So consumption we know is a what? Consumption is an injection, so all we've got to do is just get the multiplier, which is 10. 10 into 20, because that is an increase in consumption, gives you 200 billion, which is great. Now, do you think that's the final answer? That actually cannot be the final answer because that's only the change in investment. We want to know the final impact on the GDP, the total value of the GDP. In order for me to do that, all I need to do is just add 200 with 900 billion because that's the actual GDP. And 200 plus 900 billion is 1,100, which is why the answer is D. Okay, moving on to question 7. The table shows selected economic data for countries A and B 1 year after they both had a nominal GDP of 545 billion. So country A, we've got the normal GDP, the CPI. Country B, we've got that too. All you've got to do is put the formula for real GDP because that's what it says over here. Which of the following best describes the differences between country A and country B in terms of the real GDP? And we know that the formula for real GDP is nominal GDP over CPI into 100. So for country A, again, if you put in the formulas, for country A, it's going to be 522. Just put in the formula. Nominal GDP over CPI into 100. And for country B, it's going to be 571. So we can see that there was an increase in country B, which is why the answer is going to be C. It says over here, country B has a higher real GDP. Okay? Then we're going to look at question number 11. Question number 11 says, the MPC within an economy decreases. So if an MPC decreases, we know that the multiplier should also decrease. MPS and multiplier go the opposite way, but the MPC and the multiplier go the same way. Which combination of changes in the simple multiplier equilibrium income is most likely to occur? So if the MPC decreases, the simple multiplier should also decrease. So it's either A or it's either C. What happens to equilibrium? And again, if consumption is decreasing, that basically means that injections are going to decrease and leakages are going to increase because, again, consumption is an injection. So if leakages also decrease, it should be this equilibrium income should decrease because, again, that basically means that leakages are more than injections. That is why the answer is 11. Okay? Question number 13. How many do we have? Great. 13. Which of the following distinguishes nominal from real GDP? We already know this. Nominal GDP is the actual market price. Real GDP is the price with adjusted for inflation. So in this case, the answer should be A. Answer should be A. Okay. 16. The information is the table in the table below refers to a hypothetical economy. So we have the income, we have the savings. If national income rises by 4,000 billion in year 4, what will be the level of consumption expenditure? All you've got to do is that if I'm actually, I want to leave this to you. I want to leave this answer to you. It's because it's a bit of a tricky question. If you guys are really curious, the answer is C. But again, it's a bit tricky, so I'm going to leave this to you, and I want you guys to try and solve this. And let's see if you get it right. If you don't, then that's fine. I'm going to be attaching the workbook answers anyway, and that has the solution for this as well. So that should help. If it still doesn't, that's fine. We're going to be... I'll do it with you on Zoom, or I'll just make another video. But again, it's a bit tricky, but it's not too hard. It's okay. So you should be able to do it. Okay? Then we've got question number 18 over here. It says a $45 billion increase in government spending caused a $225 billion increase in GDP. What is the value of the MPS? They've told us the increase in government spending, which is what, 45 billion. They've also told us the end result, which is the increase in GDP, which is 225 billion. All they're asking is what is going to be the MPS of the economy. All you've got to do is you've got to put the formula, which was y equals to k into change in AD, remember? So we know we have y over here, which is 45. Then we don't have k actually. And then we have change in aggregate demand, which is 225. What we get is k equals to 225 over 45 equals to 5. So now we know k. If we already know k, it shouldn't be too hard for us to find the MPS, is because we also know that k equals to 1 over MPS. So that's 5 equals to 1 over MPS. And that actually gives us 1 over 5 equals to 0.2. Henceforth, the answer is D. Okay? Moving on. Question number 19. The information in the table refers to a hypothetical economy. This is fairly easy. What has happened to the level of GDP per capita between year 1 and year 2? The GDP per capita, to find out the GDP per capita, all you need to do is GDP divided by the population. Okay? So again, find that out for all the 3 years. For year 1, you should get 8. For year 2, you should get 8.4, and for year 3 you should get 6.7. Okay, now it says what has happened to the level of GDP per capita between year 1 and year 3. Before we even look at the answers, we know that year 1 to year 2 has increased, but year 2 to year 3 has actually decreased. So the answer is actually 3, because it says it increased in year 2 but fell in year 3. So answer is D, sorry. Now we're going to look at question 2. Again, it's fairly easy, so I want you guys to do it. I'm just going to tell you the answer anyway. This is 2.5. B is 62.5 billion. And then I want you guys to answer this. I want you guys to answer this as well, because we've already done this above. Again, I want you guys to do this, but for today's class, again, just watch what I've done so far. Along with that, I've already sent you the workbook questions, and I remember asking you guys to do this in class, but I'm pretty sure a lot of you probably left it out. So I want you guys to do page 98 to 100 of the workbook. I've attached this in the first class, but I'll attach it now as well for you guys. So after watching this video, I need you guys to move on and do page 98 to 100. Super, super important, especially for this. Remember how we did the tariff questions, and then I gave you guys a skill revision, and that should have really helped you, because that basically really makes the concept perfect for everyone. So this one is the exact same thing for that as well. So please make sure that you practice this. Take a photo and send it to me, please.